Good morning, everybody. It is game day, and it could be the last one of the NHL season at that. This is Morning Cup of Hockey alongside Colby, Cohen. I'm Jonny, Lazarus. We are presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway. Please play responsibly, and remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. Colby and I are going to have Frank Seravalli on shortly. We're going to talk about everything around the league. We're not going to touch Stanley Cup Final until the back half of the show, where Colby and I will preview the game. There is a lot of news going around. The Columbus Blue Jackets coaching position is now up for grabs, so we'll talk to Frank about that. Ryan Warsofsky takes the job in San Jose. Some Hall of Fame stuff coming up next week. A lot of different things to get to. So we'll have Frank on here soon. But before we do that, Colby, how'd the birthday celebrations go last night?
Everything was good. My wife was a happy camper yesterday, so everything was really good. And before we bring Frank on, I know we said we're going to hold off on previewing tonight's game, but on kind of a separate note, from a Florida Panthers standpoint, you sent me that video of the Florida Panthers practice facility that got put on. You said it was on their social media channels yesterday, right?
It was on the NHL's. They have it on YouTube as well, but the NHL account posted it.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I don't know if you have all seen this video of what Vinny Viola, the owner for the Panthers, and his staff did for the Florida Panthers practice facility, but I mean, they went all out. And look, I worked in Chicago for a couple of years. They had an incredible practice facility. The Flyers just did a new practice facility a couple of years ago. The Canadian teams have always had really high-end practice facilities. The Bruins built Warrior Ice Arena years ago, in the last 10 years as a new practice facility for them. But, this Florida Panthers practice facility looks to me like they may have one-upped everybody else around the NHL. And look, I think part of that is due to the fact that, space is probably a little bit cheaper out there in Florida. It's a little bit easier than doing it, in the city of Chicago, like the Blackhawks do or whatever. But I got to tell you something, that matters, especially when you're recruiting free agents. You've already got the whole no tax situation, no income, state income tax. You've got warm weather to sell year round. Guys can play golf year round. The Florida Panthers are putting together not just this impressive campaign of marching their way to a Stanley Cup. And I know it's been a couple of seasons now, Jonny, where they've kind of reclaimed, their franchise as a meaningful franchise. But, when you look at the fact that, the way the tides are changing and a lot of people are moving to Florida anyway, the team has now been good for like 3 or 4 years. And I know this year looks like the year they're finally going to get it done. But, what this will do for youth hockey and the growth of hockey and the longevity of hockey. I mean, you're going to have a whole generation of kids that are growing up while the Panthers are really good, which means they're going to get hooked, which means one day, 30 years from now, they're going to have kids and they're going to bring and usher their kids in, or they're going to want their kids to play hockey, right? And so the trickle-down effect for the growth of hockey in South Florida, it's massive. And when you see Vinny Viola, making this type of investment into the team, into the club with that practice facility, I'm blown away by it. I mean, they are going to probably be the number one free agent destiny for the next little while. Them, Tampa, Vegas will continue to be up there. These places have things to offer that a lot of other places do not. Philadelphia used to be the premier free agent destination. And I'm going back a little bit, right? But they were always the ones who landed the big name or made the trade to bring in Forsberg and Roenick and just different names, right? And I know the Rangers have always been too. I don't want to slight your Rangers, but the tides are turning. The tides are turning. You can take $1 million less a year in Florida. You can still make the same money. And now the facilities are not only up to par, but they're better than everybody else.
It's a country club. I mean, they have pickleball courts too. It's insane. You could spend your entire day there as a player if you want, not only just with the hockey, but you can bring your family there It's a place where your kids can hang out and
Yeah.
the wives can hang out. It's not
Yeah.
just like a practice facility. It's kind of like an all-inclusive thing that
Well,
they
it's a
made. And it's
family
awesome.
sports center where
Yeah.
like my friends that I've talked about on the show before that sit right behind the goal, like
Mhm.
they all have sort of re-gotten into hockey. They played growing up, but now the Panthers are good. And the boys in the family who are all about my age in their mid to late 30s, they're all playing hockey again. They've got their 5-year-old son playing hockey. They've got their 3-year-old daughter figure skating, and they're all doing it in that new practice facility. And so again, you're seeing this trickle down effect in the community of how to grow the game. And it starts with having a good team. And again, that's going to inspire generations of fans. My
Yeah.
dad got into the Flyers back in the day when they were the Broad Street Bullies. They were really good. I bet you Frank, similar story, because Frank's dad is a hockey guy. And his mom is even a hockey mom, right? And so our dads loved it. They got us into it. Now, Frank's kid plays hockey in the Philly area. I don't, my kid, my daughter's not old enough yet. And, pending later children, but eventually I'm going to put my kids on the ice in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. So that is how you grow the game through the community. As we welcome in Frank, Johnny, I think maybe you wanted to say something.
Well, yeah, I was going to add too. Peter Worrell is a old Florida Panther that stuck around and helped with youth hockey in Florida. Like, I know the age group for me, like Chase Prisky, Brandon Duhaime, Andrew Peak. Like, there's a lot of guys my age from Florida.
Shane Gostisbehere, who's a little bit older, I know, but
he
he's
was
a
the
Florida
one
boy.
Yeah, he was like the older guy of the crop. But the '96 birth year in Florida is like the first birth year to have multiple guys in the NHL, and I think it was because that '96 team that went to the Cup Final.
Yeah.
It started that trend
Right.
of hockey in Florida.
Right, yeah.
Now, we're gonna, like your point, we're gonna see it now with the guys on this current team who probably stick around and raise a family there, and then 20 years or so from now we'll see that. But we got Frank on now, who's in Florida. No travel troubles.
No travel troubles, but just think of all the children that will be born 9 months from now in Edmonton after Saturday night's game.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
I don't think hockey popularity in Edmonton is something we will ever have to worry about, Frank, but we were showing a little bit of a snippet of the video of the new practice facility that the Panthers built. And we were just talking about how this last couple of years of hockey in South Florida, with how good the Panthers have been, is going to inspire 15, 20 years from now, these generations of hockey players, because young kids are falling in love with the Panthers, who will then one day have kids and, pass it along. So I think this little run for the Florida Panthers is going to have such a massive effect on the growth of hockey in South Florida down the line. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I think you heard the tail end of what I was talking about with our dads and the Flyers and this and that.
Yeah, I would say I'm not pessimistic on that view. I just want to be a realist about it, because everyone says that, right? And yeah, there are things that you can point to that say, yes, the next generation is coming because of that. But it also, just being here, boots on the ground now for the third game in Florida, it doesn't register on the Richter scale here. Like, if you go to a restaurant and the server asks you, oh, are you here on vacation? You say, no, I'm here for work. And then they say, what do you do? You're like, I'm here for the hockey. They're like, what's the hockey?
Yeah.
And that's just a fact. Like, that's, you don't get that in Edmonton. It's still, even though it's here, even though it's the Stanley Cup Final, even though the Panthers have a 3-1 lead, the TV numbers alone will tell you, like, we're talking about 1% of the population in the U.S. watching the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a really small number, and it still has so much growth that needs to take place.
Yeah, and I was just saying, I have these friends who live there that have gotten so into it over the last couple of years. They're back playing men's league. Their 5-year-old boy is now playing hockey, and so it's a small sample size. I'm talking about one family, but it's cool to see. And Frank, we already have a funny comment in the chat from Buckaroo, who says, "I have one child as a direct result of the Edmonton Eskimos winning the Grey Cup." So sounds like you're probably on to something.
Dude, I'm telling you, like, there were thousands of children created on Saturday night. Thousands.
Oh God, that's
Edmonton hospitals are going to be overwhelmed at some point 9 months from now.
we'll definitely be able to look to a population boom in Edmonton to winning that game 8-1 the other night. But Frank, we do want to go around the league with you a little bit today. We focus a lot on the Cup, and we're going to talk a little bit about it later in the show. But yesterday something happened that you predicted 2 weeks ago when Don Waddell took over. I know we talked about it on DFO Live, and we were in complete agreement about it. What can you shed light into the process of the of Waddell or Don Waddell, however you say it, in letting Pascal Vincent go? And do you have any idea, because it is a little late in the game, although there is clearly some good candidates available, of what way they may be looking there in Columbus for Johnny Gaudreau's fourth coach in 2 years since he joined the Columbus Blue Jackets?
And 10th in 10 years, they said, right?
It hasn't been pretty. So what I would say to shed light on the process is Don Waddell spent a couple days getting to know Pascal Vincent and had never met him before, had only seen him coach on the bench, and just had a vague idea of what he was all about. And I don't think that there were any issues at all in terms of their compatibility or ability to get along, or even probably his vision of how to coach. I think that there was just so much leftover baggage from this season, specifically with the young players that are so critically important for that team moving forward. Ken Johnson, healthy scratched. Fantilli playing on the fourth line, out of position. David Jiricek scratched multiple times. There was no way to put all that back together again. And part of it was the situation that Pascal Vincent was handed, stepping into training camp a few days before it starts, some turmoil with the Mike Babcock exit, plus I think a real push from management to have this team try and be a playoff team. That I think when you look at all those things smashed together, basically what you have is a team that needed a fresh start. And that's what they get with their next head coach. And in terms of candidates, I don't have a complete list, but I'd be real surprised if Todd Nelson, who's coaching in the Calder Cup Final with the Hershey Bears, is not on their list. But I think he's got 3, 4, 5 guys that he wants to talk to, and there's still some guys that are left over from this hiring cycle. Like, I'm surprised that Dean Evison hasn't gotten an opportunity in this hiring cycle. You've still got Jay Woodcroft. You've still got plenty of other guys that have been in the mix for other positions that didn't get them, that I think are really qualified candidates. And before someone says in the chat,
we're monitoring,
hey, why do people keep going to the same, the retreads is the quote that you always see. Why do they always hire the same people? I can't help but look at this conference final and say Paul Maurice, Peter Laviolette, Pete DeBoer, the retreads are also just damn good coaches.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why they have success. It's because they're really good at what they do. And it's not an accident that Peter Laviolette's teams have gone to 3 Stanley Cup finals. It's not an accident that Pete DeBoer is one of the most successful coaches of his generation, although doesn't, is still, looking for more. And then look at the Stanley Cup final. I mean, Paul Maurice has been around forever. He's been a head coach in this league since 1995 with the Hartford Whalers. He's the longest tenured coach without a Stanley Cup win, and that is 1 game away from changing tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, look, and the other thing on top of the whole Columbus situation and who they'd bring in if they do go for one of these veteran guys who have been around, look, you got to think Columbus, that job is desirable with the prospect talent that they have. Don Waddell has always, to me, seemed like a patient general manager. He doesn't seem to make hasty decisions. Maybe that'll be different if he has different set of rules with his owner. It sounds like Columbus's owner is a great owner to work for, from what I've heard. And maybe you could tell me if I'm wrong on that, Frank, but this would seem to me like a really, really desirable job.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think, especially for a general manager, Look at the window and run that Jarmo Kekalainen just got.
Yeah.
11 years with one playoff round win.
It's
Not
kind
only
of
that, but
crazy
they
when you think about
That's
that.
the only playoff win in their franchise history too, right?
Yeah, one round.
Yeah.
They beat the Lightning. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But think about this. 11 years, finally gets fired, and is still, I was talking about this at dinner last night, still somehow scouting for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was at the Combine a couple weeks ago in Buffalo on the floor wearing Blue Jackets gear, scouting for them.
No.
Yes.
And is that a Don Waddell hire, or is that a
No,
owner?
that's just hey, this guy's under contract. We're gonna use him. Yeah, we like him. He just made some mistakes as manager, and he's still scouting for the Blue Jackets.
Wow.
Insane, yeah.
I mean, I feel like I heard a story that he might have a role, but I didn't realize that it was like officially happening. That's got to be the highest paid scout in the NHL.
Yeah, well, Vic mentioned that the Blue Jackets also beat the Leafs in the bubble, but that was in the qualification round, so that doesn't count.
Okay.
Doesn't count.
Fair enough.
But Frank, sticking with the Blue Jackets, there's a lot of rumblings obviously now about Laine. Colby and I talked about Laine last week. We kind of went back and forth on where his best fit would be, but just this whole fresh start thing, right? Is it a real fresh start with Patrik Laine to this point of his career, or is there just now concerns about him, wherever spot he lands in?
I mean, I said he has a lot of baggage, Frank,
Yeah.
and I said it's a
Well, that's fact. That's not
high
opinion.
risk.
That's fact.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a high risk move, especially at that number.
Well, it's not going to be at that number because they're going to have to retain in order to make it happen, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Either that or they're going to have to take back a really bad contract from someone else. So it's just another form of retained.
Right.
I think it truly is a fresh start on a number of levels. One, I think he needs to get out of Columbus. Two, I think as someone who has stepped up and addressed his mental health issues, it's a fresh start to turn the page. And three, it's also physically a fresh start. He only played 18 games last year. It was a tough year. He's another guy that was scratched by Pascal Vincent, that just had an off-season shoulder surgery, if I could say that correctly. And he's, so physically, mentally, also scenery. Like I think wherever he goes, I'm not predicting that he's going to have, drop right in and have success, but it is really a fresh start.
Is there a certain team that you think he'd be a good fit? I mean, we talked about Carolina, possibly New Jersey, the Islanders even. Do you see one spot where you think it would work out well for him?
I mean, how many teams need an upgrade in the goal scoring department?
A lot.
Like if I'm the Buffalo Sabres, I'm taking on some damaged Patrik Laine goods at a discounted price to try and find more goals in my lineup.
Right.
I'm not leaving any stone unturned if I'm Kevin Adams.
Yeah.
But I could also see him fitting in on a team where there's less pressure to win, less pressure to perform. And I'll give you a recent example. Jonathan Drouin, Montreal, also admittedly dealing with some mental health issues, goes to Colorado, gets a fresh start, is not asked to be the guy, is no longer playing under a huge money deal that he feels like he has to perform. He's not at home anymore. And he goes to Colorado. Yeah, it helps that he had a little bit of a different situation, having chemistry with Nathan McKinnon, but still goes there and is able to sort of fit in seamlessly because the pressure isn't ratcheted up and it's not all on you. It's the focus and attention isn't all on you. So I could see it from both perspectives, either the team that needs to get back in the mix like Buffalo or the team that's already there and is just looking for supplemental help. I think he'd be a really good fit in those types of situations, but Colorado's already, as an example, they're already dealing with their own cap issues.
Yeah. I mean, Taylor Hall kind of thrived in a situation where he didn't have to be the guy when he went to Boston. Obviously a different situation. But I hear some of those teams and I think about Patrick Waugh and leaning on Laine, and I don't know how those types of things, would play out. Frank, look, I wanted to talk a little bit about your buyout article that you wrote in the last week on dailyfaceoff.com when you put up some of the biggest, the names of the biggest candidates who could be, buyout players. And, Pierre-Luc Dubois you had at the top of the list. And we looked at it on Cap Friendly and you wrote about it, not actually that devastating to your salary cap to buy that contract out, actually kind of shockingly reasonable. But, Rob Blake said we have no plans to do that. And I know these guys can change their minds. I remember when Shattenkirk got bought out in New York, they said they had no plans to buy him out, and he literally got bought out the next day. I lived it with him and remember being with him when this happened. So on that list, who do you think is the big name that's going to get bought out? I mean, I know you had JG Pajot on there, Torrey Krug, Campbell,
Barclay Goodrow.
I remember when JG Pajot was kind of the belle of the ball when he first got traded to the Islanders, and they were like, this guy's going to put us over the edge and blah, blah, blah. But who is going to be the guy that you think actually a team pulls the trigger on?
I think the Oilers have to do it with Jack Campbell. They can't go through another year of Campbell counting against almost $4 million on their cap to play in Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. Just doesn't work. Not with all the other, considerations that they have. So his buyout would drop to $1.1 million next season, and that would save them $2.85. So it would almost basically wash away the mistake that they made with Connor Brown, because his contract this year is a bonus overage that carries over to next year. So he's $3.25 million on next year's cap, even though he's likely not playing for them. And so essentially the Oilers would just be kicking the can down the road, right? Because then the Campbell contract stays on the books beyond that. But at least in temporary terms, you get some relief. And for a team that's in the Stanley Cup Final, that you could easily see a path for the Oilers to get back there next year, it all kind of makes sense. So I think he's an almost certainty. I think he's a 95%er in terms of, confidence that he'll be bought out. But I still, to go back to Dubois, like I know what Rob Blake said, and you just referenced it. Like, first off, the fact that the question was asked and no one was like, oh my God, what a stupid question. Like, that the team's been thinking about it. The question is, will they be able to pull it off? Because he turns 26 on June 25th or 4th. And once he turns 26, then the buyout is double the cost. Yeah.
Right. It goes from 1/3 to 2/3, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the buyout window doesn't open until 48 hours after the conclusion of the Cup Final. So if it goes to Game 7, they won't actually be able to pull that off. But this is their one and only chance. Like I said, he turns 26 in a week's time. So you either pull the trigger and you get out from under a really bad deal that's going to be on your books for the next 7 years at $8.5 million, and you live with a relatively minor buyout for the next 14 seasons, which is not comfortable, but at least you would have saved yourself $31 million in real cash. Like, that's $31 million you get back for your owner. And you admit that you made a mistake. You traded assets in addition to the contract that really makes it painful, but you live to see another day. And I think I cannot stress enough how much sense it makes for the LA Kings to get out from under this if they have the opportunity to do so, because the only thing worse than making a major mistake is to double down on it.
Yeah. And every year that goes by, Frank, and every time the salary cap goes up, that buyout hurts you a little bit less because the percentage gets a little bit lower. Johnny, why don't you,
when it's $3 million a couple years from now, the cap's going to be $100 million, and you're talking about a 3% hit when it's down to $1 million again, and you're in years 12, 13, and 14 of this buyout. Like, we're going to be talking about 1/4% that buyout hits, and it just, again, cannot stress enough how much it makes sense. And by the way, cannot stress enough how much we need a place like Cap Friendly. The fact that they're going away around July 5th makes
horrible.
Me sad.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just to address Catherine in the chat, Rob Blake's exact quote, because I looked it up today, was, "We don't have any plans to do that." So he didn't say we'll never do that. We're not doing that. He said right now that's our plan is not to do that. Well, that gives you a little bit of a wiggle room to
100%.
say, well, our plan changed.
No, so let's take us back to April. They don't know if the Stanley Cup Final is going to go 7 games. What if they don't get the chance? So if you say, yeah, we're going to do it, all you have is hysteria for 3 months being like, oh my God, they're buying out Dubois. And instead you were able to put it to bed. And if it comes up again and you pull the trigger, then it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Frank, I just wanted to ask about one specific player that we had a question about in the chat from Adam Kerr. I actually haven't seen or heard much on Patrick Kane, but are you hearing anything on him in Detroit? Because it seemed like his messaging at the end of the season was that he won't be returning to Detroit and testing for agency. Have you heard?
Yeah, I think they've still been in contact, but I think
Mm-hmm.
the expectation is that he's moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Not 100% certainty, but look, I think Patrick Kane's only going to be better next season. He finished on a pretty strong note and had some magical moments for the Red Wings as they fell just short of that playoff spot. But you get finally a normal summer of training. I can't stress enough how important that is for someone that's his age, that's been through a lot. He's as hungry as any player I've ever seen. I think his passion and his drive to be the best is as detailed and dialed in as anyone. And I think if you can find a place that he really likes and give him some term, I'm talking 3-year deal, something like that, the AAV is not going to kill you. And I think what he can provide for you is near point per game performance that he was really close to that already. I'll tell you what, I don't know if they're actually going to make it happen or if they want to, but I can tell you that they had interest in the New York Rangers, and he had interest himself when he went through the free agent process, because he felt like when he got to New York and was hurt that he tried to do his best, but that he sort of disappointed them. They didn't say that, but he felt like he left something on the table because he wasn't at full strength. And I think wanted a chance to maybe try and do that over again to make it right.
So you think there's a redemption opportunity here?
No, yep. And knowing him, that's exactly his personality. He will want to go back to New York and show people that he can. And look, if you could get him at, let's say, $5 million for 3 years, and you can get 75 points out of him, I can't show me a team that couldn't use that. I'd be hard pressed to find it.
With all due respect to Tyler Toffoli, I don't think they're in the same category.
Not even at this point.
But do you think now? Well, and I guess we can save this conversation actually for after we let Frank go, Colby. But
yeah,
you have one more.
Let's just ask Frank. Let's put him on the hot seat really quick before we say goodbye to him, because we know you have a busy day today, Frank. You're in Sunrise, or you're in Fort Lauderdale. You'll be in Sunrise this evening. I'll wave to you upon landing in Florida this evening. But what's your prediction on tonight's game? I mean, is the Oilers going to drag Alberta, or are we going to see the big shiny cup handed out in Sunrise for the first time ever tonight?
Man, I got to tell you that I have basically zero feel on this.
Yeah.
If you're a gambler,
everyone else.
If you're a gambler and that's what you're looking for is intel, I don't think there's any. I've seen the lines from Betway. I don't think there's any value in playing the Oilers. I have a hunch that the Oilers are going to try and find a way to send this back to Edmonton for Game 6, but I could just as easily see Bobrovsky coming back and shutting the door after a really tough performance. I mentioned driven and detailed athletes. Bobrovsky's in the same category in terms of Kane and their drive. And I'll tell you what, though, if Edmonton finds a way to get back there for Game 6, I think we're in Sunrise again for Game 7.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then also,
that'd be the dream.
Yeah.
It's what we all want,
If not all of us, because it's draft week, and you'd be flying right from there to Vegas, which is fine if need be. But if you're the Florida Panthers, you got to empty the clip tonight.
Yeah, it has to be a Game 7 mentality, right?
This is your shot to make it easy and not sweat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Frank.
All right,
Well,
Frank.
listen,
Yeah, thank you.
go get a little vitamin D if you can today. Get yourself a little fresh air. We know you've been buried in the computer doing shows, writing articles. We appreciate
You look
it.
tan though.
Catch Frank today.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
We all know that Colby's all about the D, so it's good.
Is that what you're going to start doing now when you leave the show?
He always comes fine. You can catch Frank today on the Daily Faceoff live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel at noon with Tyler Yaremchuk, along with anywhere you get your downloads, your podcasts on this exact YouTube channel. So make sure you're back around noon. Frank, appreciate you coming on today. Enjoy your day in Florida, and we'll see what happens tonight.
See you guys.
Thanks, Frank.
Just before we do get into the other games, I do see people talking about Patrick Kane going back to Chicago. I can just tell you with absolute certainty he's not going back to Chicago. I got to tell you the other thing. I don't think he would want to go back to Chicago. I know everyone's like, oh, Connor Bedard. Listen, the Blackhawks are still a little bit away from being good. Patrick Kane wants to be in a situation where he's going to play in the playoffs, no matter what. He is not going to go pick a rebuilding team. It just does not make sense whatsoever. And he's not going to go back to Chicago to pour water on that flame. I've seen it time and time again. Our buddy, Barstool Chief is driving that bus. He's been driving that bus, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen. So, moving along here, Jonny.
Well, Colby, I was going to ask you when Frank was on here if the Rangers would even want a guy like Patrick Kane. Like I know, it didn't work the first time, but after this experience and this run, the conversation around New York is getting bigger and getting more physical. And Kane is not necessarily in that department. So why would you target a guy, that can get you 75 points, like you said, in the regular season, but the Rangers don't really have a problem scoring and putting up points in the regular season, So is that really a guy they would want come playoff time? Like, I'm not saying
listen, he's a proven playoff performer. And a lot of the other questions around New York in the playoffs this year was who is going to play on that top line wing spot. Yeah. I mean, when you're putting Jack Roslovic in one game and then we're talking about moving Goudreau. I mean, so it just really depends on what Drury does with this roster and what he frees up and can he find a way to go make it heavier on the backside? I mean, the Florida Panthers have a heavy top six. We had this debate on this show recently about this heavy skill finesse type of, where's that line, and the Florida Panthers seem to have that dialed more than anybody with that heavy skill. But look, I don't know. I can't answer that until I see the other moves that Chris Drury makes and what kind of flexibility he has and leaves for himself. They obviously have some RFAs they got to get done. And I think, Lindgren and Schneider, like you got to think about your back end a little bit. But again, I don't think they ever should have let Nico Mikkola walk. Like, I think Mikkola would have looked pretty nice on that third pair rather than Gustafsson this year and would have been a bit of a difference maker in that role, for the New York Rangers and spreading out ice time. So, look, we'll see what happens. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of movement at the draft and around obviously free agency. Yeah. Daily Faceoff started promoting and talking about their free agency show that they'll be doing on July 1. I think it's a 3-hour show. I don't know exactly what time we're on the air at. I don't know if we're coming on around 11. I forget the exact details, but I'll be a part of that show on the panel. I believe on the main panel for that. Frank will be kind of on our insider cam, similar to how we did it on trade deadline. So, keep an eye on Daily Faceoff's different, social media channels so you can see what exactly they have in store. Yeah, it's going to be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern on July 1. We'll have all the signings. We'll have all the news. We'll have all the trades. We'll have reactions. We'll see if we get a player or two on after they sign somewhere to talk to. And then it'll be similar around the draft. There'll be live shows on Daily Faceoff's YouTube, all surrounding the draft. Johnny's going to be in Vegas for sure. I might be in Vegas. It sounds like it's trending towards me also being there with you in Vegas, Johnny. So we'll have live shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we'll have something on Friday too. We probably won't be doing 9 a.m. Eastern because that'll be 6 a.m. in Vegas. And if we want to get guests and relevant people, we'll have to, be a little bit later.
Let them sleep in a little bit. Yeah.
So make sure you're subscribed to the Daily Faceoff YouTube page. It's what you're watching us on right now. If you're on Twitter, obviously that's a different story, or Facebook Live or Instagram Live or wherever you get it. So make sure you do subscribe so you see everything that's going on, with the draft, with free agency and through the Cup coverage. The other thing is while we're talking about this, like this episode, if you're enjoying it, you guys have been great about it. It's the growth. Really, we've really seen this kind of crazy growth the last 4 to 6 weeks. And a lot of it has to do with our placement within algorithms because of how great you guys have been smashing that like button. So we're greatly appreciative of that. And look, we're still talking hockey. We're late in June here, June 18th, and we're still talking hockey, Johnny. But this tonight will be the second time the Cup will be in the building to be presented. I know it was there for game one, which we hadn't seen before, but look, it's put up or shut up time now, right? I mean, you're back in Florida, you're on home ice, you've been the better team. You got your teeth kicked in last game, on the scoreboard, at least, maybe not in the scrums after the whistles. Let me ask you a question, Johnny, as we move into our Proraso playoff preview. And you can go through Proraso if you want. And then, what I want you to talk about is who has more pressure tonight? Is it the team on the brink of elimination or the team trying to close out on home ice?
Okay. Well, first, this is presented by Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care made in Italy since 1948. Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Proraso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15, in all caps, Hockey15. And I feel like this is sort of a trick question for you to ask me because I'm
not asking this for you in a trick way.
I know, but I feel like no matter what I say, I'm kind of wrong in this situation. That's where my brain is at right now, because if
it's an opinion question, so you're not wrong. Give us your opinion and then support it. Didn't they teach you that in middle school?
One thing that I hate, though, I hate when a team goes down 3-0 and says we have no pressure. Yeah, you do. You're gonna fucking lose.
I mean, it's just bullshit,
right? It's I get it. It's the mentality, and it's a positive way to look at things, but you're in the Stanley Cup Final and you go down 3-0 in the series. To say you have no pressure, you just spent your entire postseason to get to this point, and now you're going to look at it we got nothing to lose. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you just played hockey until late June, and you're going to not have anything to show for it. So
yeah, you're with me on that. Okay,
I don't believe that for 2 seconds.
But with that said, I do think the pressure tonight is still on Edmonton. But I know that in Florida's room, they're probably saying, we better not fucking go back to Edmonton. I think the Oilers clearly, if the Oilers go down 1-0, they're going to feel it more than if Florida goes down.
All right. So
I'm saying Edmonton has more pressure tonight.
Okay.
Which should be the obvious answer.
Right. Yeah. And listen, I agree with you. I really do. I think that you're crazy to think that down 3-1 is a good situation in a playoff series.
I get it. Even if they win, they go back home, but still you got to win 2 more.
It's you have to win 4 out of 5 games against the Florida Panthers, and it's 4 in a row, against the Florida Panthers. And look what happened in the NBA Finals last night. And I'm not an NBA guy, I'm not a basketball guy, but what happened in Game 4? The Dallas Mavericks came out and blew it, and blew the Celtics away. And then in Game 5, the Celtics showed why they're the best team, why they're the NBA champions, because they're the better team. And Kyrie Irving chokes in Boston, and the sports world is all okay today with him losing again. Again, which I don't follow basketball, but I certainly enjoy watching that guy lose. And so, yeah, I don't see how, when you're talking about McDavid's legacy and you're talking about, Draisaitl's going to re-sign and come back. And look, just because you're the best players and the best teams, you don't always get to the Cup Finals. Like, these things are so rare. And I've talked about on this show, having sat in the front row and watching my teammates battle through playoff series after playoff series as a healthy scratch, and all the little things that we needed to go well, and all the saves Tim Thomas had to make that he shouldn't have made, that were not human, and the deflections and the bounces and the penalty kills and the delay a game penalty. Like, so many things have to go right to win. And I saw Craig DeRemus in our chat a little bit earlier, who's the head coach of the New Jersey Titans in the North American League. They won the Robertson Cup a few years ago, which is the NAHL League Championship, right? Yeah. And he'll tell you, any high-level coach, right, juniors, you need to win 4 rounds of a playoff. It's not necessarily who has the most skill or who is the best team during the regular season. The stars truly do have to line up, right? So there's no guarantee that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are back next year in the Stanley Cup Finals. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee they ever get back. It just, how many times has Tyler Seguin talked about the fact that he won a Stanley Cup his rookie year and he said, so this is normal, okay? Mm-hmm. Now he's been in the league for 15 years or whatever, and he hasn't won again, okay? And so you get this perspective of just how hard it is. We all picked Dallas. Everybody thought Dallas was going to the Cup this year, other than probably people who live in Edmonton. We were all wrong about it, right? So it's
I had
so
Edmonton
hard
in my
to
final
get
out of the
there.
West.
It's so hard. You did?
Yeah. I had Rangers Edmonton.
Okay, so you were one of the maybe 3 people in DFO's pool that had that. So, kudos to you. You were 1 for 2. That's better than I did. But it's just really, really difficult to win 4 series. And I know I'm on a tangent right now, but the reason I'm saying it is because, of course, the pressure's on McDavid and on Draisaitl. And I know Knobloch said, I can't wait for the next 10 days. And Connor Brown said, we've held the play and this and that. It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
I agree. I think, I've learned a lot through this playoffs about seeing through that stuff. And, this series has been, I think you can kind of, if you're an Edmonton fan, you can spin it in your direction. And if you're a Florida fan, you certainly feel good about everything, even with that game 4 performance. Like, the score could have been 15-0 or 2-1, and you're still feeling the same if you're Florida.
It's still 1 win and then 2 days between games. It's not like it's even one game and you're still feeling the juju from that. Let me just put this question to the chat. All right.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Who has more pressure on them in this game tonight? Is it the Edmonton Oilers, or are Jonny and I wrong? And do you guys feel like the home Florida Panthers, they have more pressure on them to win, in this game?
But it's also, to me, like, I look at this Florida team, and even if they have to go back to Edmonton for a game 6, I don't see that as an automatic win for the Oilers. Like, everyone's saying, if it goes back to Edmonton, I think Frank just said it, we're going to be back in Florida for game 7. Like, Florida's been a really good road team. They have. And you're telling me about the pressure and the, we have no pressure and all that stuff. If it goes back to Edmonton for a game 6, and we know Tyler kind of said this on the show yesterday, the energy will be incredible in that building, but there's going to be a lot of nervous energy too, again, because once again, if you lose that game, the cup is given out in your building, for the road team. Like, there's a lot of pressure in that itself too, so there's all these different factors and different things that go into it, but you have to think tonight that Florida finishes the job. I think Florida is going to do it. I know we talked about the NBA briefly for a second with Jason Tatum, and, Jeremiah, I think, put it in the chat too. It's one of the bigger stories that Kachuk and Tatum went to high school together, and it'd be pretty cool to see them win championships on back-to-back nights. That's got to be a pretty special feeling for anyone that went to school with them, anyone that's from their town, teachers, all that stuff. It's a pretty cool story in itself. But, the Oilers, I'm rooting for the Oilers. I am. I'll be upfront about that. I want this series to extend. I want to watch more hockey. I want there to be more hockey to talk about. and I'm hoping the Oilers come out and play a strong game tonight. But I think this one's going to be, a 2-1 tightly played hockey game.
I mean, like, I think Bob responds. I think, we've brought up on this show what John Tortorella said about Bob. He's the most focused athlete he's ever seen. I also would put him in that Patrick Kane category of focus and try to get better every day and driven and stoic and all of those things. But, I'm with you, Johnny. I think we're going to see the cup handed out tonight. I think Florida is just going to impose its will. I saw that comment from Jay Miller in the chat as well. Taking a shot at Johnny's gambling addiction, but I think that
gambling addiction.
Johnny likes to go to Madison Square Park and gamble on how many people are going to walk by in the next 10 minutes. I mean, the guy is just a full-on degenerate, but I think
that's
we're
actually a pretty good made-up story off the dome there.
See the trophy handed out tonight. And I think, look, the biggest area where Edmonton, the way they were able to thrive is the fact that in that last game, their transition out of their own zone, there was no east-west. They didn't slow it down. I didn't see the D back, forth. It was north. They got going north, and that's something Florida normally outdoes them at. And, Florida's reads were seemingly a second off here, a second off there. But, you look at puck battles from probably the hash marks in Edmonton's zone up to the blue line. Edmonton was winning those puck battles, and then they were getting north. And then they scored, 5-6 goals off a transition, off the rush. Yeah. And they were finally able to get middle ice, because when you're transitioning north so quick, you're catching that third forward for Florida, and you're getting odd man rushes where the back pressure is not so good that guys like Forsling and Ekblad are backing up. I mean, I haven't seen Forsling and Ekblad and Mikula and Montour, any of them, Kulikov, OEL, back in like we saw in Game 4. We've seen their gaps be so good because the back pressure through the middle of the ice is always so good. But when the Edmonton, which again, individually a faster team, they don't play faster, but individually have the guys that are faster. And when they were able to do that, they almost played Florida's game the way they got north and created off the rush. And it was highly effective, but I just don't see Florida, getting themselves caught up like that today. And that's why I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong tomorrow. I hope you can all tell me I'm an idiot and I'm wrong, but I do think Florida's going to close this series out tonight. I hope. I'd love to be wrong, but that's what I think.
It's also something too, and I know Edmonton scored on the power play in the last game. It was a 5-on-3, granted, but the Oilers' power play still hasn't been able to get much done, and that's why I don't have that much confidence in Edmonton again, like on the road. I believe they're 1 for 16 in the series so far. So, that's something that separates them, going into the series, right, was how good their power play was. Not that Florida's power play wasn't, but Edmonton's power play is what separates them from the rest of the league. And that hasn't been, their bread and butter. And that's something that's a little bit concerning, especially going on the road. Like, you want your power play clicking because it's something that can get the crowd out of the game. It's something that can give you some momentum. But until I see their power play fully effective, I'm not really going to have all the confidence in the world in Edmonton, especially in this hole.
Well, I'd love to see an overtime game tonight. I see Weinberg 85 saying that. I mean, that would just be great. You get to overtime of elimination games, the either eruption that you're going to get from the building or the needle drop, quiet, pin drop quiet that you're going to get would be, awesome. But I just think, Florida's D-core is going to be their D-core tonight. And I think we're going to see a Florida win. It sounds like Ryan Lomberg is coming into the lineup for Steven Lorentz. So adding a little bit, more grit and sandpaper to that fourth line, maybe a little bit more spark and a little bit more energy Lomberg brings. So we'll see if that pays off, if that, works out in their favor. Can't imagine we'll see lineup changes in Edmonton. And we'll see if Stuart Skinner has another one of those sort of game-changing, momentum-changing saves that he made when the game was 2-1 in Game 4 in him. So, look, Could be our last game of the year. We could be coming on tomorrow doing a eulogy, doing a post-mortem. Where do they go from here? We don't know yet, obviously, what tomorrow's going to look like. Hopefully we have more hockey over the next couple of days to talk about. But we shall see. So we're going to finish off the show today and take a look at our Betway bet of the day. And our partners at Betway still offering that free $200 introductory bet. Create a new account by scanning the QR code on your screen. And then get into Betway and bet on whatever it is that you want to bet on. You can bet as much or as little as you want, and you will be reimbursed up to $200 on that first bet. The offer is only available outside of Ontario. Please play responsibly. As always, must be 19 years of age or older. And what we are going to do is an anytime goal scorer, and we're going to go Matthew Tkachuk. I think this is a game where, he's going to want to leave his mark on it. He's going to drag his team into it. I wouldn't be shocked to see Forsling get on the board tonight for whatever reason. He seems to always score in the big moments. If Edmonton's going to win, McDavid's going to filter in on a couple of plays, but we're going to take Matthew Tkachuk, anytime goal scorer, plus 187, decent value, not great. Obviously they're thinking this may happen too if it's only plus 187 on an anytime goal scorer in an elimination game in the Cup Final. So that's where we're going with our Betway bet of the day. We're going to take a look at our poll, which was really, really close, Johnny. We had 195 votes, 50 to 49 in percentages. 50% say no, 49% say yes. We do know we have a heavy Edmonton. We do have what?
1549 makes up 99%.
Yeah, but it could be because it's an odd number of votes.
Okay. I didn't know if that was possible.
I mean, there's probably percentages and decimals that it just cuts off, when you're looking at that. So pretty close though. I think it's pretty close. I think Frank said it, hard to really handicap what's going to happen in this series. It really is. I mean, it's been pretty wild.
Yeah. And, with Matthew Tkachuk too, like if you told me the Panthers would be up 3-1 in this series and Tkachuk and Verhaeghe would only have 2 points combined, 1 goal, I'd be like, how the hell, Verhaeghe's -4. I mean, granted, probably these are a lot from game 4, but Tkachuk -3, Verhaeghe -4.
A lot of goal jackets handed out in game. Would they have 1 power play goal out of 8? Was it?
Yeah.
Was it 1 power play goal? Yeah. So seven dashes were handed out in game 4, where otherwise things have been pretty tight, right? I mean, there's been empty netters, 3-1, whatever, 4-3, so or 4-1, whatever it was early. So we'll see what happens tonight. I think there you go. Jules Winfield says 50.5, 49.5. There's your 100%, Johnny, for your
not a big math guy.
Brain. Yep,
yeah,
for your math brain. So stick with us the rest of the week as we continue to sort of hone in on our plans for next week. We'll have, like we said, the show times may be different. It sounds like Monday will be no show because we'll be going through Friday of next week to have a show on draft day. We'll talk about who we're going to bring on in and around the draft, what time we're going to do it. If you enjoyed today's episode, on your way out, throw us a like on the like, throw us a comment. Johnny and I do look at the comments at night. We try to respond to any and all of them, even if you're shit talking. We'll try to at least get back to you. Some of it hurts Johnny's feelings.
I look at Colby's comments to your comments
because I don't really have the feelings that Johnny's an emotional guy. I guess I kind of missed out on that, Gene. But we love you guys. We appreciate it. We appreciate the energy in the chat today. Our producer, Vic, a little shout out to him for having things dialed on the right. In the chat, we had Frank Seravalli on today. Thanks to him. Johnny, final word, my friend.
I just hope we see Edmonton win tonight. That's all I got. I'm rooting for the Oilers tonight. And I don't know. Again, like Frank, I don't really have a feel for it, but go Oil. You?
I already told you what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, who are you rooting for? You rooting for Florida? Or you rooting for Edmonton?
I said I want to see 7 games, so I think you could do the math there. You know, I want to see I want to see 7 games, and then honestly, it's a coin flip to me. I want 7 games, and in the third period of Game 7, I'd like it to be 2-2 with 5 minutes to go in the game.
That's Colby Cohen hockey right there.
That's what I would like in Game 7. So whatever needs to happen between now and then, that's what I'm rooting for.
All right. Big thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk to you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our Hockey Insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.